Greetings, good afternoon, good evening, good night. It depends on what time of day you're watching this program, but this is Through Our Lens. I am Abdul Mubdi and my host with Dominic.
How y'all doing? And we have a special guest today.
My name is William Smith. I'm a Democratic District Leader in the 68th Assembly District in East Harlem and parts of Central Harlem.
Okay, right. Today we're just going to become informed and give information out in regards to a district leader about some of his roles and what are the importance of political or politicians in the community.
Well, I appreciate you asking that question, and I want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to think about how we can empower our community with information, because as we have always been taught, information is power. And I think that the burden on district leaders right now is to not only work on educating our communities about the political process, helping them learn how to navigate the structures of government and the bureaucracy, but also empowering them with information. In the information age, we need to make sure that we're crisp, that we're on time with the data that we're able to acquire, and then be able to effectively disseminate that information in the community. So right now, I'm really focused on really liaising with tenant leaders, getting a good sense from them about the type of issues that they're facing every day, get a sense for the sentiment in the community. That's very important because we can't represent the community unless we understand where they are right now and really be able to learn how to pivot in terms of messaging as well as the response with resources based on their feedback. Their feedback is very important. It's very important to me. And I really want all of our elected officials on all levels to understand that needs to be a core focus for us is in taking that feedback from the community and responding with resources and ensuring that the people see that we're just invested in seeing them progress and see prosperity in our community in some way, shape, or fashion.
All right. So for a young person looking at this program, he wants to be engaged in within the community, and how can they reach out and get involved?
No, I appreciate that question. There's so many different ways. So, in terms of the political route, right? In terms of when I think about my function as a district leader, you can get involved with your local Democratic club, or you could petition and get a minimum amount of signatures around 30 to 100 signatures, depending on the size of your election district, and become what's called a county committee member, which is the lowest level position in the Democratic Party and in the parties across New York City, where you're able to represent your election district, which can include your large development or a certain number of blocks. Depending on, you can find your polling site when you look on the Board of Elections website and say, find my polling site, and then you'll be able to find out what your election district is. And then that's why the burden is on myself and my colleagues across the county party to work on better empowering the community to understand that process so they can step up to the table and get their seat at the table through county committee and other ways through political activism.
What districts do you cover?
So it's the 68th Assembly District, so that's East Harlem. So I'm in the Democratic Party in Manhattan as well as in Queens. We're broken up in what's called executive parts. So I'm executive part D. That's the most northern part of the 68th Assembly District. So that runs from 108th Street and Fifth Avenue to Park Avenue on the downtown side, 108th all the way to 132nd Street. Now, obviously, depending on the barriers of the 70th, because the Executive Part D neighbors the 70th, so we're right on the border, right next to them. So that's in terms of the jurisdiction, and it includes Schaumburg houses, Schaumburg Development, sorry, known as the Heritage now. Sorry, Fahim. Clinton houses, Lehman Village, Taft houses, AK houses, MS houses, 1775 Lexington, and as well as a few other areas on 116th Street.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is that demographic? What's the demographic of those communities? What do they make up? What's the ethnicity of those communities? Mostly those communities.
Well, just to clarify, I think that data is only available, I think, on a maybe congressional level and maybe down to the community board or assembly district level, and we can work on getting you that information. But just from my general sense, it's a a healthy blend in terms of the African American community, of course, as well as the Afro Latino community,
Right.
as well, and then as well as other groups. I know there's a lot of Bangladesh members of the Bangladesh community and other members of the Asian Pacific regions.
The Pacific. Yeah.
What is it a middle class district or lower income district? You would say it is.
Well, that's an interesting thought, because when you think about our community, right, when we think of the messaging, they paint us as being, I mean, obviously there are many of our members in the community that are low income,
Right.
and have, various challenges. There's also a good blend and healthy blend of middle income residents who have worked very hard, and are striving to keep their families thriving. So I think there's needs to be a better blend of the incomes. I think we need to instill in our community a better sense of being an entrepreneur, tapping into being a fiscal steward of, and also learning how to just be a better person and helping others grow, because that's how we're able to grow wealth in our community. But that's going to take some time, and that's why we're having these conversations to jumpstart these dialogues.
Okay. So now the changing of this is a changing demographic in certain New York City communities, specifically communities of color, because it's more diversity that's coming in. You have new people coming in, and you have some old people going out. But how do you see the changing demographics of some of our communities?
You mean the change? You mean in terms of economics, or you?
Economics, as well as nationality, and because we have an influx of immigrants who are coming in, African immigrants specifically, and then we have other immigrants all coming in within our community. So how do you see the changing demographics? I mean, like New York, we always welcome everybody because we're here. We have the United Nations here. We have we have Ellis Island. We have everyone who's come to America. Sometimes they come here first.
That's right.
So we're like the doors of the rest of America. So how do you see being here in New York, having the stand that we have in New York City? What do you see the influx of different ethnicities and people coming to the community?
Well, just so my father, came here from the Dominican Republic. So I know the importance of that process being available to those, because I wouldn't be here if he wasn't able to get into the country,
Okay.
right?
Yeah,
And
so
we want, and
the donde eres your tu papa from Dominican Republic. I said de donde where's your
Santo Domingo.
Santo Domingo.
Santo Domingo. Yeah, pardon me. I need to practice my Spanish a little bit. And now it's documented. I'm going to make sure I take a Spanish class.
Okay.
Embrace that versatility when you think about that, and that's something that's really important, right? So you just highlighted something that's important. If as an elected community leader, right, if a member of the community, whether they're a voter or not, approaches me, I need to be able to effectively engage them. And you just highlighted a deficiency, and something that all of the leaders in our community need to think about. What are the ways you can improve your public service delivery? What's your what are your deliverables? What are best practices, and are you promoting that effectively in the community? And when I think about the diversity of East Harlem, I think about the diversity of Harlem and Manhattan. We expect that level of welcoming energy. And I've heard very encouraging remarks from members of the community in different levels of leadership about the fact that they're encouraged that the government has responded to the migrant families that are here. They stressed the importance that understanding that they look upon them as brothers, sisters, and members of the community in a broader family context. But there's also conversation about how the government can continue to work on improving its delivery for its current citizens. And I think it's important for us to think about how we're going to balance that conversation, because we want to make sure we're welcoming to all groups, make sure that all diverse viewpoints are welcomed, that it's effectively incorporated into the process, and that dialogue and the end result results in positive results for a unified and diverse city. But we have a lot of work to do.
with those district, I mean, the space that you covered, a lot of them are NYCHA facilities.
Yes.
That's why is it? Well, I know you probably did. Why is it so unkept? Like I just came from a meeting and they spoke about lead, asbestos, and mold.
Well, we have to think about the age of that housing stock, right? I mean, some of those properties are going on, what, 50, 60 years old by now.
Some of them older than that. Some of them were built in the 1920s.
That's right. I know Harlem River House is a pretty old development. My grandmother grew up in Lincoln houses. So, NYCHA is it's an ongoing battle for all of us community leaders and thinking about how we advocate for our public housing family. And I mentioned the word public housing family because I think in the general conversation and in terms of the advocacy, we forget that they are part of our community as well. But they face a different layer of adversity because of the conditions like that you highlighted, and it's made it very hard for those communities to be able to push themselves forward from a certain perspective, right? To be able to live in your home and get adequate resources and be able to see a measurable response from government, and those developments are not seeing that because the funding is just not there, the money's not there. I was in a particular development last year, spoke to a caretaker, and he expressed his frustration with the fact that he had to cover a 14-story building in a highly commercial zone by himself, which is very disappointing because how can he cover that building effectively as a union member, right? How can he do his job as a public servant if he doesn't have the resources and the support that he needs to maintain the cleanliness of that property?
14 stories. That's it. One person.
So you see the challenge there.
Yes.
So I empathize with the staff. I thank them when I see them for their service and their dedication and their commitment. But now the burden's on the local municipality, city council, state government, and the federal government to remember that they have an obligation to preserve public housing. It's in the social contract. You want to maintain housing for those who do not have the resources to sustain themselves from a certain perspective. And housing is a basic need.
Housing is a basic. So, explain to some young people about the process of the relationship between the people and public officials and government.
The process, you mean in terms of how the engagement, you mean how they can vote?
The engagement as well as the responsibilities of the public officials in certain capacities. So if you have a district council leader, if you have the mayor through the city, through the state, to the government, to the federal government. So that process of why they should be engaged in what's going on within the community.
Yes, it's an interesting question. So, there's a need for robust civic education on all levels, probably from middle school all the way straight through college for students, and making sure that those layers complement each other as they go through that process. But that's an ongoing conversation and dialogue that I've initiated with my fellow colleagues in the county party, thinking about how, from a political perspective, how we can do some political education workshops and educate people about the process, and as well as provide some political perspective and context and historical context to understand why participation in that process is imperative. Now, to answer your question in terms of how they can get involved. If you are 18 years old, I think, or even younger, you can apply to become a member of your local community board, which is the basic. Correct my terminology, which is the ground level of advocacy and representation, right, in our communities. And we need more youth there so that way they can have a seat at that table and get engaged in that process. In terms of voting, they need to vote in every election. We all need to vote in every election. Every election is tied to one another. So when you vote for president, that's important, every 4 years. You're also voting for your member of Congress every 2 years, and your senator every 6 years, your city council every 4 years, and your local party district leaders, state committee members every 2 years. So there's a need for all of us, and especially the youth, to be heavily invested in getting a better share of that process and having better numbers of participation if they are to have their voice heard tangibly.
All right.
What is the role of a district leader?
District leader is an unpaid volunteer party elected official responsible for appointing poll workers, people who are responsible for working at the election poll sites, either through early voting or on election day. We're also responsible for voting for the county party chairman, as well as nominating candidates for county civil court. And it may be either for a countywide civil court seat or for a civil court seat that falls within that district leader's particular jurisdiction. So we have municipal court districts, which are quite large. It can cover several assembly districts. And if you're a district leader that falls, it has the election districts, which is the lowest level of a political district, right? Then you're, called into a room, not necessarily called into a room, there's a meeting to decide on who will get the nomination to fill that vacancy. This year, I voted along with my co-district leader, Sharice DeBose, for Eugene Duran Bowen. He's a candidate on the ballot actually right now for civil court across Manhattan. And we had to vote as district leaders for the county party to nominate him. So that he could say that he's nominated by the county party, which obviously helps a candidate in terms of being able to get buy-in when they need to get signatures. Those green sheets that you see that all of us walk around with in in March, in April. So when you see those green sheets, please make sure that you sign them, you inquire about the candidates, and you get the full scope of those candidates' platforms.
What is the important role of the civil court within the community?
No.
So, because some people, like I said, again, engage in young people, they want to be educated on what all these functions of government.
Oh, well, thank you for that. So, in regards to criminal cases, criminal matters, civil litigation, if you have to have your business transaction, you need to sue. Mm-hmm. As well as housing cases. You need to sue HPD, you need to sue your landlord because of a lack of repair issues, or need to sue an agency because you're not getting you're not getting the right access to the services as mandated by the law, according to your interpretation. And the judge is the one who makes that final determination, right? And then that's very important. So it's important for district leaders to make sure that we have a better understanding of the judiciary and how those candidates would potentially serve in those capacities. So the civil court is very important because when you sue, when you're able to initiate a lawsuit, right, and demand legal action, if successful, the judge can mandate that the agency have a certain amount of time to comply. Let's say it's an access issue to social service benefits. Right. And based on the agency determination, they say, this said person not able to get access to these benefits based on this criteria. But after a thorough review, in that particular scenario, judge might rule in that particular person's favor, and now that person is able to get access to those benefits now as a result of that legal decision. That's very important. And these civil court judges, after we nominate them and they're on the ballot, all of you have to vote for them. Your vote puts them in that role.
Puts them in that office. It puts them in that
So
position.
it's very important that we increase our turnout.
Right, and know who they are and who you're voting for.
Very much.
What they stand for. Are they standing for you or against your community?
That's a lot of information right there to that you just threw out, right? So should we put a lot of this in middle school? So as they get older, they can be more aware and involved with their community, as far as some type of curriculums that geared towards kids being educated about the political arena.
Well, I appreciate that, but we have to remember when thinking about civic education, you have to look at it from a nonpartisan lens. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's important that we educate the youth and the students about the political party system, but we have to make sure that any curriculums are completely neutral and nonpartisan. So that, it's really important for us to think about that when we, launch those type of conversations, because and it's difficult, right? We're in a hyper political county, hyper political city. I mean, I'm an elected Democratic district leader, right? But I strive to make sure to think about, aside from thinking about the party, we want people to vote. I've met Republicans, encourage them to make sure they vote. So to answer your question, in terms of educating them, the civil court, judicial, electoral part is what I would say is could be considered quite high level. That might be a topic that might be more appropriate for maybe high school to college students. I know for sure there's tons of, and maybe junior high school students. And that's why it's important for us to get some data and do some surveys to get a sense from the youth. What is their basic understanding of government, so we can figure out where we can plug the holes.
Right. So whoever's still listening and watching, we want to just get you engaged in the political process and know what's going on within your community. And so that if you see an issue, you can try to help fix it or find the avenues to fix it. And just for those people, again, we're speaking to all people of all levels. What is partisanship?
Partisanship is only being aligned with your particular party's way of thinking or interests. So if I'm thinking about an issue about I want French fries to be free for everybody,
Right.
but I'm not thinking about the health benefits. I'm not thinking about the adverse health effects of that. But I'm only pushing.
To my party.
There you go.
Right.
So that's a.
So when you talk partisanship, you're talking about going over to other parties' lines. So you may be in a Democratic party, but you may go into another party or the Green Party or Independent Party and push the same issue forward to different parties and not just.
Yeah, we strive for, you want to make sure that you're balanced this overall, and be able to, you can have, be highly vested in your particular issue, but it's important that you can work across barriers of difference when pushing advocacy, because when you think about the final product, it's going to incorporate
Everybody, because it's just we the people. So
go.
it's everybody inclusive. It's not just one avenue of how you see it, but you have a whole community a whole society actually that's going along with you.
Speaking of advocacy, I know it was a big push for legalizing marijuana, decriminalizing marijuana.
Yeah.
The impact or the explosion of all these smoke shops throughout the inner city is a little alarming to say. How can that be addressed? Because I work with young people. Is an increase in marijuana usage now?
I'm so glad that you brought that. You highlighted that, because we've been talking about the economic and budgetary benefits of cannabis, and that those are very important, right? When we think about a revenue source for a lot of the social service issues and other underlying issues that our communities are facing. But we want to ensure that we promote alternatives to cannabis as well, and that I'm sure there is some money earmarked for them, and maybe that's part of our advocacy, is demanding for a larger share of it to be funneled to athletic programs. Encourage information campaigns so that way the youth can think of alternatives. I don't need to partake in intaking cannabis today. Maybe I'll go work out. Maybe I'll go to the gym. There's a program for me to work out at the gym. I'll go participate in some performing arts. Providing them avenues and pathways to alternatives to smoking, right? Because those are, when we think about the cannabis industry and what's been promoted, we're thinking about it from a medical perspective, right? How it can help alleviate your pain, how it can help certain people with their mental health and other health, underlying health issues. But there's also the side of overusage, right? Dependency
and abuse.
and that potentially being a pathway to maybe partaking in other type of substances potentially, which we don't want to encourage that in our communities at all. So we want to in fact discourage that. So if the burden's on, obviously our generation to set a better example, right? encourage our youth to look upon alternatives and engage them on ways. And then also find out, why do you think you need to smoke? Does it make you feel good? Ask these questions. Does it make you feel good? Do you feel as if you achieved what you wanted to achieve in the day? And why was the intake of that particular product complimentary to you? I'm sure the questions will not become you won't get solid answers.
Right.
And then we want to make sure we provoke those thoughts in their heads and make them think about it from a different perspective. That at the end of the day, what they really want is peace. They want prosperity. They want to be have a feeling of, at least for the brief moment, right? Being in a utopia. But you can afford that to yourself without the use of a substance. So,
Well, a lot of young people cope with marijuana from trauma, stress.
Right. It's usually people have an outside source to
Yeah.
deal with a problem that they already have. So for the use of substance is to tamper or to taint what they're going through emotionally, physically, or socially. So
coping mechanism.
that's a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And our body, I mean, we naturally have coping mechanisms. Our body produces endorphins for itself naturally. But, when you add another outside substance, it tries to enhance that already internal coping mechanisms that we have. So there's a problem, you got to go to the root. So the root of the problem is what is the issue and the problem that you have in the first place that will have you seeking out an outside substance to cope with that.
Are there any bills on the floor or in coming up just about supporting the addiction of marijuana users?
Well,
Narcotic Anonymous and Alcohol Anonymous, and we need Marijuana Anonymous.
I'm not aware of any particular bills as of right now, but I would encourage not only you both, but also all of the everyone who's viewing to follow the New York State Cannabis Control Board. And that's the central place to get all the information in terms of regulations around cannabis. I know that Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, she's been a staunch advocate of the cannabis industry and ensuring that there's equity for entrepreneurs and businesses.
That's what I was about to say. Equity, but also restorative justice for those people who've been criminalized.
Yes.
Through the judicial system for marijuana.
Yes. So, but I encourage you both, as well as the attendees here. Legislative session in Albany for the Assembly and the State Senate starts in January and ends in June, and the budget is issued April 1st. So there's a very tight window of advocacy for all of us. So this year, please try to make all efforts to call your state legislators, submit these inquiries. I encourage you both. Call your particular assembly members and state senators and ask them, what are the bills on the docket in regards to these issues? And have you thought about that? And if they haven't, request a meeting with them so you can distill that thought process in them, at least for the moment, in hopes that it inspires them to provide some legislative advocacy around that issue.
Right.
But that's something we can obviously explore and work on educating the community about.
Right. It's just information, because knowledge is power, and we have to be informed. The more that we inform, the more that we know, the more that we can act upon and move forward and better our lives. But we have to go from information and knowledge first. So seek knowledge and better your lives.
Yes.
I got a few more questions. Why is it that a lot of methadone clinics are in the inner city,
Well,
low income areas? And it's because people get bus here from Staten Island and seeing.
There's been for one, it's a very touchy issue.
Right.
Right. Because you empathize with the patients or users, whatever, depending on the terminology you would use, right? The consumers of that service, in terms of the safe injection clinics. You empathize with them because you understand that they're someone's child, someone's friend, relative. If you look at it from a religious perspective, regardless of your religious affiliation. That's, the energy that's God's child, right? So we have to think, consider that when we just think about this conversation. But on the other hand, there's also a need to have a balance of quality of life in our community, right? A need for thinking about what other resources are available so that way we can minimize and circumvent that dependency that we talked about in regards to cannabis, right? But we're talking about a dependency on very hardened
Different types
drugs
of
that are
drugs, opioids,
banned
and stuff like that.
by the federal government, right? And we've been able to see progress in terms of, from a legislative perspective, in terms of what, criminalizing, those individuals that are faced with that addiction. But right now, when you're thinking about addressing that problem, in my personal opinion, I'm not sure if those locations are necessarily the right alternative or the best way to address the underlying challenges like you highlighted, right, for those patients. And I think before the government, state government, green lighted these facilities, thinking about those underlying challenges and thinking about the resources needed to address them should have been effectively, in a collaborative way, cultivated. And it wasn't. And it was not a transparent process. So to answer your question, why are all of those here? I would encourage you to pass that question on to your governor and in the state, because they're the ones who greenlighted it. But that's not a full answer for you. That's just to tell you which path that we have to go. That path is going to require a lot of advocacy to change it. I think that those clinics are there because obviously certain people thought that because of the historical challenges that Harlem, northern Manhattan, has faced. That's we were the epicenter of the in the '70s of the heroin cartels, right here in the local bases and heroin kingpins in the '80s, cocaine and crack cocaine kingpins, and now we're dealing with opioids and heroin amongst other substances. So there's a lot of, and then also we don't have enough police. NYPD's losing numbers, and not of any fault of their own. It's a difficult challenge being able to recruit people to serve and protect our communities. It's a very tough city to survive in.
Yeah.
So when you think about all those extensive variables, right, that I just highlighted, I think that whole issue needs to be revisited, and we need to reinitiate what the blueprint will be for how we can effectively address that issue. And thinking about those patients and their needs, right, and balancing their care, and thinking about prevention for them, but then also thinking about the quality of life in our communities, and thinking about what some of the illicit activity that has been mentioned in the press, that I've seen in the community in my own eyes, that all of you have seen, you've been informed by your community members. How are we gonna limit that? Because I don't like the fact that youth have to walk from school and have to see that type of behavior. It's triggering.
It's triggering, but it's also should have, well, you had zones. So you have in specific services that they provide. Why are they next to certain types of schools? They shouldn't be zoned differently. But that's with city government. With who's responsible for it? How do we advocate to change those situations that we see every day in our community?
Well, I'm thinking in terms of highlighting the fact that mentioning city government, right? So in terms of from a legislative perspective and regulations, it was the state that would govern that, right? But the city council, the community board, is the entity and the vehicle for the people to from the micro level to be able to engage this issue and initiate changes. And community boards have unofficially, or members of the community board here have unofficially expressed frustration with the fact that these clinics were opened in this community without effective and open, transparent consultation with the community.
Well, a lot of people don't know when community board meetings are happening. A lot of people are not aware of just certain information. It's not being trickled and assimilated down to where it's supposed to be.
But it goes back to the root of it, of the education system, and being involved in informing community of how to be civically engaged. So, because it's a lacking of it. You know, it's like a disconnect. We have a generation that's unaware, or they're sometimes aware but not engaged in the process or trying to change some things within the community.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning that, how we initiate change, right? And when we think about that change, when we highlight the issue of the safe injection clinics, we highlight issues in terms of NYCHA, highlight issues in terms of barriers to access to voting, and the barrier understanding how to vote and why to vote and how to circumvent the bureaucracy, right? And there's a campaign by a great organization in our community called the Greater Harlem Coalition. And they have a campaign, it's called Fair Share for Harlem. Okay? It's a great campaign. They've been working on this for many years. And I'm, along with my other fellow community leaders and district leaders in not only our assembly district across northern Manhattan, we're all heavily invested in ensuring that Harlem gets its fair share, both from a budgetary perspective, from a policy advocacy perspective, and just from a general response from government. We need to get our fair share of response and care.
And care. For so long, our community seems like it's been neglected,
Yeah,
overlooked,
yeah.
and put to the side.
And that's why this campaign is so important. The Fair Share for Harlem. Hashtag Fair Share #4 Harlem. Please make sure you tweet it out when you are engaging your elected officials. Make sure you participate in this petition that will make sure we promote on social media. It's already on there, but we'll re-promote it as well. And I encourage you to get your organizations to promote it as well, because it's really important. Because the only way we're going to be able to say we're able to achieve equity, right, is through getting our fair share. But how do we do that? Through the civic education, and that's why we're having dialogues like this. Yeah. But like I mentioned, the legislative session, we have to go to Albany. We have to go to Washington to demand the funding so the state jurisdiction, the local jurisdictions have the resources that they need. So we have a lot of work to do. Yes. We all have a lot of work to do. But the burden on the county party, the district leaders, is to ensure that we're providing the support, adding some cover, right? And providing the insight to our communities and the other leaders in our communities so they know how to effectively circumvent the government to get the resources that they need in a prompt way.
Well, they also have to be part of the people. When you look at Mark 125, it's been there for a long time, and there have been plenty of meetings and boards and all that. Now they're going to do something even without the people consent. So, whoever the elected officials, they have to really be a part of the people, because, we go out and vote, people are going to vote this 8th coming out, and it's like, it's not being reciprocated back to the people.
Oh, don't forget, you can vote early.
Early voting.
Yeah, early voting. Early voting, but election day is on Tuesday. Polls are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Make sure you make all efforts to vote. I'm sure both of you have, or you intend to. I voted early, but it's really important that we vote early. Yeah. And vote on a consistent basis.
Yeah, that's an important piece.
Well, be engaged. You have to be engaged in the process and be engaged in what's going on and what are you voting for. So, because people have this thing, especially with young people, they're saying, get out and vote, but what are you voting for? Are the parties aligned with your values, your outlook, your ethos, the way you want to see things go? What does your future look like? So you have to vote for representatives, or be the representative that is the advocate and voice for your community.
Yeah, very much so. And that's why it's important for our political parties to detail our platforms, what we stand for, because then that's the base case for why a particular voter should consider that particular party. So we have to do a better job of detailing why someone should register with our party, whether Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green, whatever your party may be, and then adding the incentive through education and empowering them with the information as to why that party is the right choice for them, and how that party will represent their values and advance the issue that they want to see addressed.
Coming engaged. Again, this is through our lens. This is just our perspective on how we see our community, our environment, and the greater world.
In our voice. Also, you want to promote?
Yes. Please make sure that you follow the Greater Harlem Coalition on social media and participate in the Fair Share for Harlem campaign. We need your voice. Your voice counts. And if we are to be one unified community, we have to vote in droves, large numbers, and work together and be consistent with our effort. Fair Share is that opportunity for us to work together. Thank you.